Hello there. I'm going to be counting down my top films of 2011. And this was a very good year, and some didn't quite make the list, like Super 8 and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and The Descendants and Rango and Winnie the Pooh and Martha Marcy May Marlene. I can name a bunch that didn't quite make it, but here are my top 10 of 2011. Number 10, Moneyball. The story about statistics and baseball sounds as boring as you can get, but leave it to director Bennett Miller and especially screenwriters Aaron Sorkin and Steven Zaillian to make it work. Brad Pitt just keeps on getting better and better, and his silent, subtle portrayal of a desperate team manager is just excellent. Jonah Hill also sheds his entire slacker comedy image in one swoop, and as funny as he was as the fat, loudmouth sidekick, he's got a good new career ahead of him as a dramatic actor. Even though I don't watch baseball, it's hard not to root for the Oakland A's. And isn't that what sports films are meant to do? Number 9 is Drive. While most people will gravitate towards the exciting car chase sequences, what made me captivated by Drive was the love story between the two leads. It's one of so little words between Ryan Gosling and Carey Mulligan, and yet Nicholas Winding Refn's direction makes it look like so much more. The chemistry is there, but we don't need endless sex scenes and witty meet-cute banter to make it work. Sometimes simple glances and great cinematography will do the trick. Of course, when it turns into a violent gangster picture, that aspect works well too. Go for the racing and stay for the touching romance. My number 8 is Rio. The formula is classic boy meets girl to save the species, but director Carlos Sedaya fills the screen with so much pop and energy. There's so much to enjoy here. The screenplay is equal parts funny and touching, the voice cast is perfectly chosen, and the colors that the animators put on screen are amazing, especially in 3D. Pepper it with a soundtrack of Sergio Mendes tunes, and Rio beats both musically and heartfelt. This has a definite feel of personal project with so much of Sedaya's own background thrown into it. Blue Sky Studios is very much an underdog studio, especially when competing against the likes of Pixar, DreamWorks, and Disney. But this definitely shows they have the talent in them as well. My number 7 is Warhorse. Steven Spielberg could have soaked this in more sentimentality and made us cry until we were dehydrated. However, what is done instead is a fair point of view on war. No side of a war is black and white as he displays good and bad soldiers on both enemy lines. The title horse moves briskly from story to story, with each version proving to be incredibly captivating. Add in Gary Rystrom's jaw-dropping sound design, John Williams' beautiful score, and Janusz Kaminski's stunning cinematography, and it ticks off all the necessary Spielberg boxes. My number 6 is Young Adult. Jason Reitman's scathing portrait of Arrested Development works purely because there is no attempt to make the characters sympathetic. Charlize Theron's Mavis is a terrible wreck, and there is no effort to make her have the usual revelation, and that's precisely why she is such an excellent character. The same applies for Patton Oswalt's handicapped nerd, Patrick Wilson's former prom king, and everybody else she meets. Every single one is a sad individual, and Diablo Cody's excellent screenplay succeeds so well in making them funny and interesting. It's certainly not going to appeal to everyone, but to me, it is one of the funniest films of the year. My number 5 is Hugo. The common theme this year appears to be looking back to the past, and Martin Scorsese's ode to early cinema definitely leaves a strong impression. On the other hand, it's a Dickensian-style adventure, and on the other, it's a tribute to great artists like Georges Méliès. For film buffs who love the beginning of medium, it's a celebration of the art form. For the young audience, it's a fun adventure that will hopefully introduce them to a new world. The way Scorsese uses 3D also helps in preserving the old ideals of cinema, ironically enough. The appropriate word for Hugo is wow. My number 4 is Senna, a documentary on a sport I don't care much about, and it's one of the most fascinating pieces of this or last year, depending on where you live. Director Asif Kapadia takes simply archival footage and audio interviews and crafts a riveting story for those who watch Formula One and for those who have never even watched the sport. It's a classic narrative of making it to the top, the rivalries that ensue, and believing in one's ideals. It's also that rare film where knowing the ending actually makes the experience that much more heart-pounding. It's an excellent example of editing used incredibly well. My number 3 is Midnight in Paris. Woody Allen's ode to nostalgia is one of his funniest, most touching, and most thought-provoking works the esteemed director-writer has done. Is the past really as amazing as our minds perceive? Would our lives really be better if we lived so many years ago? These are the questions so intelligently asked by Allen's smart screenplay. The ensemble cast is very fun, but it's Owen Wilson at the center, bringing a new spin on both his persona and Allen's, and he stands as the character I'm most related to this year. My number 2 is The Adventures of Tintin. Steven Spielberg brings Hergé's classic comic books to life perfectly. Tintin's thirst for adventure is brought to the screen with the most stunning motion capture technology and Weta's most impressive achievement. Spielberg keeps the audience excited with one breathtaking action sequence after another, with the single-shot chase in Morocco being one of his best ever filmed. However, the screenplay is smart and each character is handled exceptionally well, whether it be Tintin's Boy Scout appeal, or Captain Haddock's drunken foolishness, or the Keystone antics of Thompson and Thompson. Never has a comic book been as gloriously adapted to the screen as this one. And my number 1 film of 2011 is The Artist. An excellent tribute to classic cinema, echoing silent cinema to a T. It's endlessly charming, but director-writer Michel Hazanavicius is not simply relying on winking at the camera. The story is a strong one, showing the tides of change and how sometimes one needs to remember the good times in order to move forward. Jean Dujardin and Bernice Bejo are a revelation and add further to his beautiful recreation of silent films. So, those are my top 10 of the year. Definitely check those out. Highly recommend them, and I'll see you next time.